Snow White, Chapter 9, Restored to Life. So it came to pass that James Phillips, driving in painful state towards the forest, met the third great surprise of his life. The first had been when, as a child, he was snatched from the hands of the brutal father whose lash still, whenever he thought of it, whistled its way down on his cringing body. He often recalled that moment, the centering of agony in one nerve and another of his tortured frame as the blows fell, the setting of his teeth to keep the screams back because that other should not have the pleasure of hearing him scream. Then the sudden flash, the cry, the little figure, no bigger than his own, standing over him ablaze with wrath, the hulking bully cowering object. The lash dropped and never raised again. Following this, the years of kindness without intermission, the watching, befriending, educating. Phillips was not a man of expression, or he would have said that. If God Almighty created him, Mark Ellery made him, and always so wise, so kind, with the light in his eyes and the smile that people would turn in the street to look after. And on all his had come the second surprise. Suddenly, with no reason given or asked, the light gone out of his master's kind eyes, the smile coming no more, though he would still laugh sometimes, a harsh, unlovely laugh, in place of the mellow sound that used to warm the heart like wine. Then the life changed with the nature, the grave cares, the beneficent responsibilities cast aside, the ceaseless flow of cordial kindness checked, all business thrown into his own willing but timid hands. The wandering life abroad, of which a few random lines dropped now and then had told him, then the return unguessed by any save himself alone, the seclusion in the bit of lonely forest that bordered the wide Ellery domain, the life or death in life. For to Phillips it seemed that his master might as well be nailed in his coffin as living like this. So it had seemed at least, but now it appeared that yet worse might be. At least the man Mark Ellery had been there, alive and sane, however cruelly changed. But now if his mind were indeed failing, if some obscure and terrible disease were depriving him of his faculties, what would happen? What must happen? So far he, Phillips, had simply obeyed every dictate, however whimsical and fantastic. Here he was, for instance, the carriage filled with things which for very shame and grief he had hidden in boxes and baskets, toys, cushions, frippery of every description. He had bought them with a sinking heart. He could have wept over every foolish prettiness, but he had bought sternly and faithfully, and every article was the best of its kind. What did it mean? His best hope was that some farmer's child, straying near the wood, had struck and pleased his master's wandering fancy. His worst, but when he thought of that, James Phillips straightened his shoulders and a dark flush crept over his sallow cheek. To him, thus riding in state and misery, came, I say, the third great surprise of his life. Suddenly the coachman uttered an exclamation and checked his horses. Now the coachman, like all Mark Ellery's servants, was as near deaf and dumb as was possible for a man possessed of all his faculties. Phillips raised his eyes and beheld two figures advancing along the road toward him. his master, Mark Ellery, walking erect and joyful. As he used to walk, his eyes all right, his mouth smiling the old glad way, and holding his hand, dancing and leaping beside him, a child. No farmer's child, though its feet were bare and bare its curly head, and though the pink frock fluttered in torn folds about it. The child who was now mourned as dead in the splendid house where till now careless pleasure had reigned prodigal and supreme. The child whose dainty head, dripping and broken but still half filled with flowers, had this very day been brought to the distracted woman, who now lay prone on her velvet couch, waking from one swoon only to shriek and moan and shudder away into another. For in most women the mother nature wakes sooner or later, only sometimes it is too late. The child for whose drowned body the search parties were fathoming every black pool and hidden depth in the stream that, flowing far through woodland and meadow, had brought the flower-laden hat to the very gates of the town, to the very feet of her father as he rode out on his last frantic search. The same child, not dead, not stolen or lost or mazed, tripping and dancing and swinging by Mark Ellery's hand, talking and chattering like any squirrel while her curls blew in the May wind. They is white. Mark, the horses is white, just the way you said. Oh, I do love you. Who is that? Is it a man? Is he real? Why, like a doll does he look with his eyes? Does he wind up behind? What for is his mouth open? Can he speak? No, he can't speak, said the dwarf, laughing. At least he'd better not. It isn't good for his health, is it, Phillips? See, Snow White, the carriage has stopped now, and we will get in and go home to Mamma. Oh, yes, you do want to go very much indeed, and she will have brought you something pretty from New York. I shouldn't want her. Always, she mostly sometimes does, said the child. But I'm coming back here very soon. I'm coming, Mark. Both together we're coming back to live parts of the times. Because you know, Mark. Yes, I know, Snow White. Yes, if Mamma and Papa are willing, we'll come back now and then. Because the squirrels, you know, Mark. Yes, I know. And the birds. Do you think all day those crumbs will last them to you? Do you think Cousin Goldfinch understood when you explained to him? Do you think Simeon is lonely? Poor Simeon. Why don't you speak and tell me, Mark? Mark! Well, Snow White, the cow. What of her, my child? Mark, who will milk her? You know, whisper. She put her mouth to his ear. You know, real cows has to be milked. And we said she was real. Both we did, Mark. The man will milk her, said Mark, smiling at the speechless image opposite him. Did you ever milk a cow, Phillips? But Phillips did not speak, and the child said openly that he needed winding up. So they drove back to the town and through the streets, where people started at sight of them and stared after them, and whispered to one another to the splendid house where, above the marble steps, the white ribbons waved on the door with white roses above them to show that a child was mourned as dead. The child wanted to know why the ribbons were there, and whether it was a party, and a party for her. But for once no one answered her. The carriage stopped, and she flung her arms around Mark Ellery's neck and clung tight. You will take me in, Mark. Yes, Snow White, you will carry me up the steps and into the house. Yes, Snow White, because I love you, because I love you better as. Shh, my child, shh, my little darling child. The white faced butler tore down the ribbons and flung them behind him as he opened the door. He could not speak, but he looked imploringly at the stately gentleman who stood before him with the child in his arms. Yes, said Mark Ellery, I'm coming in, Barton. Take me to your mistress. James Phillips sat in the carriage outside and faced the gathering crowd. The rumour spread like wildfire. Men and women came running with eager questions, with wide, incredulous eyes. Was it true? Could it be true? Who had seen her? Here was James Phillips. What did Phillips say? Was the child found? Was she alive? Had Mark Ellery brought her back? They surged and babbled about the carriage. Phillips, who had received his instructions in a few quiet words, turned an impassive face to the crowd. Yes, he said, it was true. Mr. Ellery had found the little girl. Yes, she was alive and well, had no hurt of any kind. Yes, Mr. Ellery had taken her into the house. He was in the house now. He had come back. Yes, Snow White. He has come back on his own house was to be opened. He would be at the office tomorrow. Where has he been? Cried several eager voices, for here was a fresh wonder, almost as great as that of the dead restored to life. Where has Mark Ellery been, James Phillips? James Phillips searched his mind for a painful instant, groped for some new light of imagination, but found none, could only make the old answer that he had made so many times before. He has been in Tibet, hunting the wild ass.